record this so that people can view this later on. Again, I wanted to welcome everyone, and I think you'll enjoy this and will find it very helpful. And we all know that technology is challenging, but at the same time, I think that they have done a really nice job of getting this launched. And I think you'll be impressed with the admissions information that you'll see today and when reviewing your applications. So now I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Joni Yaris. She is with Liaison International, and she is going to lead this discussion.
Thank you, Jeff. I hope everybody can hear me. First of all, I want to thank everyone for joining us on a Friday. The purpose of today is to really just try to introduce you all to the new Admissions by Liaison portal. This is the portal that's going to be replacing the selections portal that you're all familiar with. You'll be using admissions this year. As you might remember, the selections portal was pretty basic. It allowed you to review applicant information and conduct certain types of searches and filters, whereas admissions it has a much broader array of tools. It also allows you a lot of customization and reporting and whatnot. With that being said, the last thing we want to do is overwhelm everybody by logging in on the first day and thinking that they have to customize their own portal. That's not something that you need to do. We'll show you today the template that we've built for all of you. We'll go over the features and some of the basic features of those templates, as well as admissions as a package. And we'll certainly address any sort of questions or concerns you might have. As you'll notice, there is a chat off to the side where you can just put in any questions that you might have, and we certainly will try to address all the questions that you have, possibly throughout the webinar, but we'll definitely leave some time at the end for Q&A. So do feel free to ask any questions that you might have, and we'll do our best to answer all of them. And with that, I will move this over to Reggie Ross, who is part of our training and knowledge team, and he is going to walk us through the Admissions by Liaison portal.
Just before Reggie gets started, I just wanted to remind them of the chat. I know you said that, but if you're not familiar with chat or Zoom, which I can't imagine any of you aren't, but there is a chat feature there. If you hover over the bottom buttons there, you can just click that and you'll see the chat on the right side there.
Hi everyone, my name is Reggie Ross. I'm a training strategist here at Liaison International. So I work on a lot of our documentation, a lot of our training videos and on-demand courses and things like that. And we're here today to talk a little bit about the new system that you'll be using, Admissions by Liaison. We're really excited about it here, so we hope to share some of that, pass some of that excitement along to everyone. Am I able to share my screen?
You should be able to.
Let's give it a try. Okay. So I think that's showing now. Let me know if it's not.
It's showing.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. All right, so just to kind of cover quickly the things that we'll be talking about in this session related to admissions. We're going to start by talking about the dashboard of the system and how to find applicants, how to look for information that's relevant on them. We'll also talk about working with applications and the specific information, specific places of the application that you might need to go to find the things that you're looking for. And then we'll talk a little bit about setting up evaluation forms if you want to record your interview results. There's a few different ways to put results like that into admissions. So we'll go through a couple of them and of course we'll answer any questions that you might have along the way. So let's see. All right, so first of all, Admissions by Liaison, it's a admissions or application management solution. And it has really a ton of functionality. There's a lot of things that it can do. And for the purposes of today's discussion, we really want to just kind of talk about what APPI is going to use it for, the APPI directors among us, what you're going to be doing with it, some of the main things that you can use it for. So The primary use for it, of course, is to review applications. You'll also be able to tag applicants and categorize them. You'll ultimately be able to set your decisions on applicants there. And there's a bunch of other features that are available to you. And we'll kind of just highlight the main things as we go through here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the dashboard in Admissions by Liaison. It's the first page that you'll see. In a second here, we're going to dive into to an actual environment to click around a little bit. But the idea behind the dashboard is to put kind of the most important information right in front of you as soon as you log in. So I'm going to see if I can switch over my view here. All right. So now what we're looking at is an actual dashboard, and it is what you will see in Admissions by Liaison when you log in. And kind of the idea here is, like I mentioned, to have the most relevant information right at your fingertips when you log in. I will say from the beginning, just about everything in admissions, there's a way of customizing it. We're not going to go too far into the different customizations and all the options that you'll have here, but just know there is a way to customize just about anything that you want. So you're going to have a standard view that we're going to look at now, and you can have that kind of in the back of your mind. There are ways to tweak things and make them look a little bit different. So again, this is a dashboard now. There's a few things that are key to know here. You're going to start off with some applicant statuses that are kind of built in for you here. And there's a complete status, and then there's a received status. And the way that the dashboards work here in admissions is that any of these charts that you're seeing are able to be clicked on, so you can view the applicants in that specific segment. So for example, here we have a review status chart here that shows up. If you want to see these applicants who need to be reviewed, you can just click on that number where it shows the number that need to be reviewed, and it takes us to that group of applicants where we can kind of click through them here. We're going to come back to this page. This is a different view of Admissions by Liaison where we're looking through the applications here. So we're going to come back to that in a minute. I'm just going to go back to the dashboard where we were for a second. Other things that you'll see here are some of the other relevant things that you might look for in an application. So there's a chart here that asks, are you a US citizen? So if you want to see the applicants who said yes to that, you can click on this group. Applicants who said no, you can click there. Same thing for applicant in good academic standing. If you want to look at just the ones who said yes, you can click here. But ideally what this is going to do is just give you a kind of an overview, a quick look at your applicants, and you'll be able to see how many are in these different categories that we've set aside here. One other thing to point out is that since the environment that we're in now is really just for the purposes of this demo, so there's not a ton of applicants here. You might see certain areas where it says something like no data. Of course, that wouldn't be as common in your actual environment, but just as a kind of a side note, there might be some things here that'll be slightly different since we're just working with kind of some applicants just for the purpose of this demo. All right, so I want to talk about applications, but before we do that, anything else you wanted to point out here, Joni, before we go on?
No, basically my reasoning behind what we've placed on the dashboard here is a lot of this is similar to the certain filter and search features that you had in the selection portal. And that's why we brought them over to the dashboard so that you would have a lot of the options that you already were using in the selections portal. That's what's built here, but you can customize it, you know. So there are some questions in here. I see a question that says, can you create a question, are you a Canadian citizen? You could do a filter. You could create a segment that says, you know, Canadian citizenship, yes or no. And based on how you've built that filter, it will show which applicants have answered either yes or no. So that's other, you know, customizations you can put on this dashboard if you think they're necessary for you. But that's pretty much all I wanted to touch on about this, Reggie.
All right, sounds good. So let's talk about the applicants grid. That's the next thing we're going to get here. And kind of the idea behind this is it lets you see all of your applicants, and we're gonna, again, take a look at the actual environment to click around a little bit here. But you can see the programs of interest, so you can see where applicants applied. This was referred to as tracks in your previous environment. You can see academic standing, you can sort here, and there's some other things you can do. So let's jump in here. And the way to get to that view is just using this toggle. I should mention here too, right at the top here, this is your navigation menu. So you'll be able to jump to different sections in admissions using that little drop down. So the first one that we were at by default is analytics, which is really, it's your dashboard. And the other one that's relevant for our discussion today is applications. So we're gonna go there. And I just wanna clear this out. And again, there's just kind of a few applicants that we have here for our demo, just to kind of get an idea of what you'll see in the in your live environment. But what we have here at the top, first of all, this is called our phase pipeline. So it lets you see how many applicants you have in each of your phases. And then beneath that, you have your actual applicants. Now, if there was if your group of applications is more than 20, you'll have this pagination here at the bottom, so you can switch to the next group within this list that we're viewing here. So you'd be able to kind of move on and click through all of them that way. A couple things to point out here, there's some kind of built-in filters for you. There's a way of filtering your applicants here to really find whoever it is that you might be looking for, whatever segment of the applicant pool you might be looking for. But there's some built-in segments or built-in filters here that you can use just quickly on the fly. One of them is program of the program that the applicant or the track the applicant applied to. So a quick filter here is just to click on one of these and choose which group that you want to focus on. So if we were to just click on one of these, it'll filter out all of the other applicants or all of the applications to a different program. Another quick filter here is to click on the phase that the applicant is in. So if we want to see just the ones who need to be reviewed, we can click here on need to review, and it takes out those other ones. And then to reset that, we can just click this little X to remove our filter here. Another thing you'll see here is a search, and of course this is really straightforward. You can search for applicants here using their name, using their email address. It's kind of there's a few different things that you can use to search there, but of course the main thing, name, email address, ID related to the applicant, you can use that search applicants to find them here. Another thing I'll show you here, the applicants can be sorted in different ways here. So there's some main information that's added to this grid that we're looking at now. One of the things is cast date submitted. Now some of these, again, since they're test applicants, you're not going to see all of this populated for all of them. But if you wanted to sort that and see who were the applicants who came in most recently, you can click that column heading, cast date submitted, and you'll see it filters them by the date that they came in. And then you can click that again, and it'll filter it the other way, so you can see the oldest to the newest. Another thing I'll show you here is you can add different filters, and essentially the filters here allow you to look for anything that's on the application. So whatever it is that you might be looking for, you can find it here. For example, if you wanted to find applicants who are US citizens, we could click form here. Now, most of the things that you'll be looking for are going to be in the form section. That's how the information comes over from the portal here. So if we click form, and one of the nice things about it is instead of having to scroll through and look for the specific question we're looking for, we can just do a search. So we'll, if it's US citizen we're looking for, we can just type in citizen and we can look for the question. This one, are you a US citizen? There was a question earlier about Canadian citizen, so we can find that too. But if we search for that and we say is yes, we can apply that, and then it'll give us the ones who had yes on that. Unfortunately, in this environment, it didn't find anyone there, but that's how that would work. The same thing we could say is no, we'd be able to apply that, and we'd find that information there as well. Another example that we can use here is if we're looking for total intervention hours, or if we're looking for hours or assessment hours, if you want to find all our applicants who have above or below a certain number of assessment hours, integrated reports, number of presentations, that kind of thing. All of that's available here. So just to kind of give you another example here, if we click forms here, and then let's say we're looking for assessment hours. So we can look for hours here, and we'll just scroll down for, there's our experience. We can search for assessment hours, and you'll see we have a bunch of filters here. We can say greater than or equal to, and let's say 100 here. So we apply that, and there we go. Found some applicants that had more than 100 or 100 or more in their on their application. So that's kind of how that filter would work. The other thing you can do here is stack filters on top of each other. So if you want to find applicants who had more than 100 assessment hours and maybe more than a certain number of intervention hours as well. So let's search for intervention hours here, and we'll say is greater than or equal to, try 400 for this. Now this is looking for applications who are both 100, or who have both 100 or more assessment hours and 400 or more intervention hours, and it's filtering out those so we can see who those are. Another nice thing about the filters, once you have the applications filtered here, now you can work with them in batch. So the way to do that, you can either just click individually on the applicants that you want to do something with, or you can click the, let me reset that here, or you can click the top corner, the top left corner there, and it just selects all of them. And you can do some batch actions with them. So if you wanted to email all of them, we'll talk a little bit about emails in a minute here, but if you wanted to send them all an email, if you wanted to change their phase, another thing that we'll talk about in a moment, or their decision, if you wanted to tag them all in a certain way, maybe this is a good opportunity to work in tags here. Maybe you want to create different tags for applicants who have a certain number of experience hours or things like that. You can create different tags for that. And here you'd be able to just click the tag option. You want to tag these 3 applicants, and it'll let you create your own tag. I'm going to come back to tags in a second to show you how to do that on individual applicants as well. But that's something you can do in batch from this view here. One other thing to point out here is the segments area. Now segments, I'm not sure how well this shows up at the bottom of the screen here, but there's a link here called segments. And what that is saved filters that are there for you. So you can go back to these segments. If you click on segments here, you'll see a group of those that have already been added for you. And really you can add different segments, whatever you want. Just like that filter we just ran, you could save that as a segment and you can come back to that. And essentially what it does is takes that list of applicants who meet that criteria and just sets them aside for you. So you can come back to that list at any time and work with it. That's what the segments do here. And these are, again, ones that have already been set aside for you. If you wanted to see all the applicants who are received, you'd be able to click on that and it kind of filters that for you. So it's just a pre-built filter that you can use here. All right, so I'm gonna clear that out again. And we're gonna take a look at applications individually here and kind of scroll through and see what that looks like. Before we do though, anything to add here, Joni, or anything, any questions we should address before we go on?
I'm just,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Reggie, can you go back to the dashboard for a second?
All right.
So I know one of the top questions people are already asking is what's the difference between complete and received under applicant status?
Right. So complete and received is just like in the selections portal with complete and submitted. These applicants have applied to your program. They've paid and applied. And the only difference is that the applicants under the received status are missing required documentation, such as transcripts or letters of reference. As soon as those documentation or those documents come in for those applicants, they'll automatically moved over to complete. And that's the only difference between those two. You can review either pools of applicants, you know, regardless of their status, you have full access to them.
And would they click on that box to see which ones are complete?
Yep, each of these are clickable.
Awesome.
And these charts that you see on your dashboard, these are based off of answers to questions that are asked in the APPIC. And we've placed these on your dashboard, or I've placed these on your dashboard because in my years of working with different internship directors, I feel like a lot of this information here is some of the more important information that you first drill down on. And that's why I put it here on the dashboard, some easy filters and searches for you. But if there are other questions in the application that are more important to your individual process, you can create a segment, as Reggie just showed us, and pop that onto the dashboard if you want to just have, you know, a chart that you can reference every time you log in as a quick reference. You can change your dashboard here. This is not set in stone.
Mm-hmm. So Joni, so for example, for the folks who are asking about Canadian citizenship, for example, since that is an APPIC specific item, could they select that for their individual dashboard of, are you a Canadian citizen?
Yes, yeah. Since it's a question that we ask, it is definitely something that they can place on their dashboard, you know. So for a lot of the Canadian institutions, you know, if they're only interested in learning about their Canadian applicants, they can certainly place that right on their dashboard.
And then if so just for everyone to know, all the training directors, there were no, and as you're brainstorming about, ooh, what criteria would I want on my own dashboard, there were no content changes in the APPIC this year, except for the addition of the 2 telemental health categories for telephone-based care. So there are now 2 items. One is, you know, how many hours and what did you do with regard to telephone-based intervention, and the same for assessment, since March 2nd when we made that change. But other than that, as you're brainstorming about your variables you might want in your dashboard, you can think about none of the APPIC content change, none of the APPIC content has changed, which was quite intentional while we convert to this new system.
There was a question about whether training directors customize the dashboard for all the reviewers, or whether reviewers can customize their own view. A couple of people have asked that one.
So your dashboard is your own. There's a default dashboard that you can always go back to, but you can always customize it to yourself. Depending upon the type of role that you are assuming, you know, what sort of abilities you have in the system, I think will be predetermined by the sort of, it's kind of like a work group that you create. You can put your different reviewers into like a basic work group that allows them to do X, Y, and Z. You would define those actions that they can perform, and they can do those within their own dashboard, and only they will see that dashboard. Nobody else is going to see it. So they have customizability within their dashboard, but again, they're limited to what they can do based on how much you want to allow them to do. And that's something that we can probably touch on a little bit further, you know, how to manage other users, because certainly you wouldn't want to allow them too much ability so that they don't change anything that you have purposely set up in the system. But again, you do have the flexibility of what you allow them to do. So the long answer is yes, they can customize their dashboard a bit. There's no other questions. Do we want to move on?
There's one question that's unrelated to the dashboard, but they want to know how long will the information be stored or accessible for each application cycle?
As far as I know, we're not getting rid of any of this information. You know, typically the way that the selection portal worked is that we kept the information from the previous cycle available to you while the current cycle was underway. I do believe in, and Reggie, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that you can continue to access applicant information through here on out. I don't think we're in the selections portal, we shut down after a while, after a certain cycle. I don't believe that we're going to be doing that in admissions. You should be able to look back to applicants from previous years. Yeah, Allison, like you said, more kind of like APPIC Has, because they use a system like WebAdmit, which maybe some of you may or may not be familiar with. You do have access to a lot of past information for a much longer amount of time within this system.
There was a question in the chat about creating our own variables based on existing variable criteria, and I'm not sure that was answered.
Yeah, I think Kimberly had mentioned that, you know, we haven't changed the structure of the application at all. So I'm sorry, let me go back to that question.
I think Wayne wants to know, can he make a more sophisticated question out of the data? I don't want to speak for you, Wayne. But for example, is it related to publications? Is there something you want to ask about that? Outside of the predetermined, the actual question on the APPI?
Because if I'm understanding, I don't think that you, well, I don't feel like you can just create your own random question and just have it be answered like you can create, you know, you can't create your own question on anything. It has to be based off of a question that we're obviously asking in the application so that there is an answer for it. And I think that what you can do with the questions we're asking, it's probably pretty limited as far as customization to, you know, the data points of that specific question. I don't, you know, you can't meld it too much, but you know, there's certainly a lot of customization that you can do, and maybe we can touch on that a little bit, Wayne, further when we figure out, you know, exactly what sort of customization people might want to do.
I think the questions have shifted away from the dashboard and moved on to, there's definitely some folks wondering, well, how do we download this to a spreadsheet? So I think that's probably what's coming soon.
Yeah, Reggie, are we able to show folks how they can extract the data?
Yeah, if we go back to our applications view, there's a couple of things with that you can make happen. So if we do a select all again, like we had done there, you'll see one of the options is to export. So if you click on that, you'll see there's a PDF that you can export by default if you wanted to just get a PDF of the information for all of your applicants. The other thing to do is, or the other thing you can do is if you have a custom export, say you want to build your own export that has whatever pieces of information that you're interested in getting, you can build that as well. And that's just by going into the settings menu. And under exports, there's an option here to create export. And for the sake of time, we won't go through every little step here, but just to kind of give you an idea, if you wanted a spreadsheet export, like if you wanted something to be in Excel, you can kind of click through and decide what fields you want. So if you want the applicant's name, maybe you want their ID, if there's, you know, you want their assessment hours, whatever else you want here, you can put them all here, you can order them how you want it, and then you would save this export. And what happens is, if we go back to our applications view here, that would then become an option to export from here. And you'll be able to run that export. So you can create custom exports, or you can export the entire application without creating a custom export. Those are some options that you'll have available here.
And it looks like we're being asked if we can edit, or excuse me, export data by track of the various different concentrations that the applicants can apply to, which we are handling via a custom question in the application. The custom question, if you have multiple if you have one track, the custom question says, you know, which internship are you applying for? And it just says, you know, internship, psychology internship. If you have multiple tracks, it's going to be the names of all those tracks. And then you can filter based on that question in the application. So you can say, I want to see everybody who responded to this particular question and answered, you know, the clinical track. And I'm pretty sure that you can then design a report to say that you only want to export information for the people who have selected that track. So you can create customized reports excluding or including certain individuals based on a common criteria. And yeah, Reggie, they are able to download. Are they able to download the entire application PDF?
Yep, the option to do that is the one that's built in here. So all you'd have to do for that is to click generate, and that'll give you the PDF, the full PDF for all of the applicants here. You can do that individually too, which we'll talk about when we look at an application.
Should we pop over to looking at an application? I don't want to take you out of the order in which you were going, Reggie, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. If we're good to move on, we can go right there.
Sure.
All right, so let's do this. I'm gonna clear our filters here, and we're gonna go into one of our applications. And what we'll have here is kind of typical of what you'll see with a lot of your with the applications that come in. I'm gonna change the view here because it's not showing all of our options. There we go. So just to kind of show you around here a little bit, on the left-hand side here, these are almost like when you're looking at a PDF and you have it broken out into different bookmarks that you can jump to a certain section of the PDF. That's essentially what's here. So you can jump to the area of the application that you're interested at that time. So for example, if you want to find their biographic information, you just click on that and it jumps down to that area. Maybe you want to find out their experience history, so you can scroll down here and look for, you know, maybe you want to find their practicum experience. You can click there and it'll give you all of their hours here, and you can see that information. So essentially whatever it is that you're looking for, whatever section it is on the application, you can kind of scroll through here and click on that. The other thing you can do, of course, is just to scroll through the whole application normally like this to go through each section that way, and you'll see it kind of moves you along in this view here as well to let you see which area of the application that you're currently looking. So that's how you kind of view the application here. There's a few things to point out, a few things that will be kind of important to know as far as things that you'll do on, or things that you can do on each application. And again, with this, there's some features built in, and then there's kind of more that you can build on to it to suit it even more to your liking. So just to talk about some of the things that are already built in here, you have the ability to create different phases for your applicants. And what that lets you do is group them based on where they are in your process. So it's like putting your applications in different buckets. If they're ready to be reviewed, maybe if you're ready to interview them, wherever they might be in your process, you can create a different phase for it. And what this shows you here, this drop down here, lets you set the phase that they're currently in. And in a minute, we'll come back and talk about why that might be important to do that. But this is a way to adjust the phase that they're in and kind of update where they stand in your application process. Another thing you'll see here is the decision area. And this allows you to set your decision on an applicant just using this menu here. So you'll be able to select which decision you want to place on an applicant using that drop down there. Another key thing here is tags, and this is what we mentioned earlier. If your process is to look at applicants and then place a tag on them to let them know, or to let you know and your other internal users know some important information, maybe you want to set them aside, those who have a certain number of hours or have a certain number of publications, or maybe is the dissertation complete? Maybe you're creating tags for all of these different things. You can add them here. So I'll just, as an example, adding them is something you do right from here. So I'll just add dissertation complete. That's a tag. And then, so we've just created that, and now we're just going to click on it. And now we've added that tag to this applicant. So the applicant will now have a dissertation complete tag on it. And now whenever you want to go back and find all of those applicants who had that, you can just go back to the, you can either run a filter from the page we were looking at before to find all of those with that tag, or you can export that information. So there's a bunch of ways that you can kind of store that once you've built those tags and started applying them.
And this might be a good place to create a very custom variable. So for example, dissertation completed is already, one of our specific APPIC items, but maybe you want to, in this era of COVID, where, you all should be really knowing that you're going to have a bunch of applications that are, if you are a site that has minimum intervention or assessment hours, the assessment hours in particular are going to be coming in way lower than you've ever seen. And so this might be, I'm thinking of a really great tag could be, looks great, but below assessment hours, or all good, but assessment hours or something. And you could create your own, and then you could run a report on, okay, I really want to try to be holistic and look at these folks. And so this would be a spot where you could really create a custom variable, so to speak.
There are two questions about whether tags and decisions are reviewable by all the reviewers.
Yeah, so that's dependent on how you set up your permission. So you can make it viewable to them, or you can choose not to. And it's really up to you if you want to make that happen or not. Looks like you're muted, Joni.
None of it's viewable by the applicant, though. Those features that Reggie was just highlighting, decisions and tags, those are all internal tools to help you through your process.
And further to that point, what we were talking about earlier with making custom tags here and making this really customized to you. Another key thing to point out here is that you also have a notes area or a comments area. So you can also add any comments that you want on applicants here. And this comment can be whatever you want it to be. If your process is for someone to go through, review the application, and then leave their thoughts, they can do that here. So that's another area you'd be able to store that information. But again, if you do store it as a tag instead, then it becomes searchable, filterable. You can include it in exports and things like that. So just another tool you'll have at your disposal as you're working through applications here. Another couple of things to point out here is that you can also, like we mentioned earlier, there's an option to export individual applications from here. So if we click on export, you'll have that same menu that we saw earlier. So you can generate their PDF to see all of their information, or if you've built a customized export, like we were just kind of going through there, you can select it from here as well. By default, you won't see all of the ones that we're looking at here, but you will be able to kind of set up your own and generate your own little export based on whatever is important to you. Another thing I'll point out here is you can also, where do I want to go? Here we are. You can also view the history of the applications here. So you'll be able to see all the things that have been done, have been updated on the application. If you have reviewers leaving comments, you'll see kind of when that happened, or tags being added, anything like that. There's a kind of a complete log of everything that's happened to the application from here. So you'll be able to keep track of all of that. So those were the main things I wanted to show you on the application, and there's a couple other features we wanted to get into, but is there anything any questions we should address or anything to add here, Joni?
Well, we do have some questions coming through about possible. I think that we should probably show how to add a reviewer or add someone to the site, to can assist with the review process.
All right, so let's do that. I'm going to go to come out of our application view here. And the other key area, we talked about analytics being the dashboard and applications being the area, of course, where you view all of your applications and work with them. The other key area for you is the settings area. And this is where you can build new things and make customizations and all of that. So what we want to look at here is the users area. So here you can create as many users as you'll need just by clicking create user. And this is really simple. It'll just let you put in, all you have to do is put in their first and last name and their email address. There's some optional fields here, but really first, last name, email address is all you need to create it. And it'll send them an email and they can use that link to sign in and set up their account. Once you have them, the other thing that you can do once you've added added the users that you need, the next thing that's relevant to this discussion is roles. So here's where you can kind of go in and decide what you want different users to be able to do. Essentially, if some of you are familiar with WebAdmit, we handle this with what's called work groups in WebAdmit. If otherwise, essentially the roles, what that does is allows you to set a set of permissions, a group of permissions that you want to allow. So things that users can do, things that they can see in the software, and what's inaccessible to them, and all of that. You create that in a role. In our example here, we have a reviewer role. You can say what exactly you want that group of users to be able to do, and then you apply that role to your users, and then they're bounded by any restrictions that you give them there. So as an example, if we were to just go in and click on one of the roles here, just to kind of give you a quick idea, this lets you see all the permissions that are available to them, what they can do on applications, things that they can build, things that they can manage, what they can do with the settings, things that they can work with there, things that are visible to them, so you can restrict data in, if there's specific pieces of data that you don't want this group of users to work with, you can add those restrictions. So there's a bunch of different things that you can do here in the roles area. And then all you're doing with the users area is going in to edit that. You can edit an existing user, or when you're creating a user, you can establish what role you want this user to be in. So by default, you'll see it's at no role, but we can place it in one of those roles, and then whatever permissions you've established, they'll then be bound by. Anything you wanted to add there, Joni?
Not on adding the roles. Basically, so when it comes to adding users, the only users that we're going to add are the program directors. Everybody's going to have an account so they can access their institution. And then the director will be in charge of creating accounts for all of their reviewers. So you'll go in, as Reggie said, and you'll create user accounts for those individuals, and then they can log in. Now, under those accounts, Reggie, can you put in any specific information? So username can be their university email address, or it could be their Gmail address, right?
Yeah, it can be whatever you want it to be.
Okay. And then placing them in a role is what's going to basically define what they're allowed to look at and change or edit. We can assign applicants to reviewers, right, Reggie? We can go in and we can say, hi, Kimberly, we would like you to review these applicants, and we can create, how is that done? Do you have time to show us that, or is that?
I can give you at least a kind of a quick idea of how it's done.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So if we go to, let's see, we want to go under, is that it? There we go. Under application review, there is an area here called phases. And this is, I mentioned earlier, this is an area that we might want to come back and talk a little bit about, a little bit more about. Phases, again, as a reminder, is just the different stages of an applicant or application cycle. So different buckets you kind of want to place applications in as they go throughout your process. Well, the way this works is with your phases, as you build them, you can decide who you want to be the reviewers during that time. So we already have a phase here called under review. If we go to edit this, we can say, we can establish a review form. And that's something I was going to show you as well, how to actually build these. But for now, I'll show you, if you have a review form already built, you can choose what form you want to assign to them. So we'll put them in that review form. And then here's where you would add the assignment. So you can say, okay, which of my users do I want to review the applications that are in this phase? So there's where you'd be able to go in and kind of set all of that up and choose from your users and establish them here.
Great, thank you. And the when we're creating users, we're just creating invitations, right? And it's not like we're creating their password.
That's right. Yeah, there's no password that you establish as an administrator. Once they log in, once they click the link to log in, that's giving them the permission to go in and create their own password.
So they're getting an invitation pretty much. Okay, thank you. We have a question here about some clarification on what you just said about the review form, Reggie.
Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate, the way that the review forms work in admissions by liaison is that the review forms are all tied to phases. So you can have a phase for applications who are being interviewed. You can have a phase for applications who are ready to be reviewed or under review. And then all you're doing is building a form, which I'll show you here in a minute how to do it. But you're building a form and associating it with that phase. So what we're going to talk about in a second here is how to build a phase or a review form to track your interview results, if that's something you wanted to do. Again, you can do that just with using the comments features and the tags features like we talked about. But if you want a more enhanced form where you can record all the different results where you that you might want to keep track of, you can build a form for it and then associate it with a phase. And then when applicants are in that phase, I'll just show you here, that form will then show up under this star icon here. So we click on that star icon, and then this one currently isn't in a phase that has a review form associated with it, but this is where it would show up, and this is where the reviewer would go in and put their results.
Right, so a form can basically be anything that an individual at an institution wants to create that allows them to ask their applicants specific questions, right, that they might ask as part of an interview. Is that like a good way of explaining it? Yeah, it's like you can create like a form that asks them whatever questions that you might have while setting up an interview, right?
Yeah, and there's a few different ways of doing it in admissions. The kind of the key one that we can highlight here is a way of evaluating interviews. So the questions that you would add are essentially for the interviewer. So you would say, you know, how did the applicant do on questions about, you know, why are you a fit for our program, or things like that. So then the interviewer can go in and say, okay, well, I think this applicant scored, you know, 5 out of 10 in this area, or maybe it's just comments that they would place on them. Maybe it's not numeric scores, but you can establish how you want those reviews to be done, or those interviews to be rated and things like that. So you can do that all within the form area.
Great, thank you.
Gretchen wants to know whether you can upload an Excel spreadsheet for the review form.
Good question. So you can upload an attachment to add to your applications. So there's an area here, add attachment. So if that's something that you're doing completely outside of the software here, and you know you're tracking all of your results and everything like that, and you just want to kind of tack it on to the application, you can do that right from here. You would just click add attachment and you would find that wherever that file is located, and it'll upload here for anyone who has permissions to see it.
And then Dana wants to know whether once you their applications have been reviewed and they have rating forms scored, can you export the scores from the ratings?
Yeah. So those rating scores and anything that's included on the evaluation and all of that, that all becomes available to use as if it were a part of the application. So those are fields you can export with, fields that you can run filters on, and all of that. That's available to you.
Mm-hmm. I think what's important to think about is the word export is always creating a report that works for you. And I got confused on one of the portals where there was export and then there was also report. And I think in this platform, export, you just always want to think of, oh, this is the way I create my unique reports.
That's right. Yeah, you set them up. You decide whatever you want to be included in that in the report, and you save it so then you can come back to it and use it whenever you want. Anything else we should address here before we, there's one other kind of main thing that we can show here, but we can take any questions too.
Mm-hmm. So I know that this is kind of for webinar for the advanced user once folks actually have data of their own to play with, this is so much like a language that if you're not using it, you're going to lose it. And so, but I just want to highlight, and just if you could give a 2-second overview of folks' ability to actually create a report based on scoring and like a weighted paradigm.
Yeah, so as an example, let's go to our settings, and we're going to go to exports again here. And again, essentially all the fields that are on the application and all the things that you've built here will be available to include. So again, it's just a matter of going in and choosing what's important to you. So if your main goal here is to get certain information, say you want to find, actually there's another thing I can show you here. There's search tools, so you don't have to go through all of them. But maybe here you want to add all of the hours information. So we're going to put all of that in here. And then this can then be exported in, if we click create export here, this information can then be export for whatever group of users that you're looking to work with. Now, if you want to build your own kind of rating form and have that information stored in admissions by liaison, that's available too. We don't have one that's currently built here, but that is information that you would also be able to track and use in your exports.
Great.
This is Wayne. The download, is it a one-to-many Excel file, or is it a flat sheet? Because manipulating the data afterwards in a one-to-many, like with the old APPIC, is hard, and then things don't align and you get wrong data.
Yeah, good question.
About.
Yeah, so you can, there's a few different options you have with these exports, and one of the ones that we're seeing might end up being a lot more popular is the JSON option here. That's, you have a lot more flexibility with that. But even within, if you did want to stick with like a CSV or, an Excel type of export, you do have options here that you can use to work with that. So as an example, I'm just going to add name, and then I think I'm going to try to think of a field where this would come into play. Yeah. So for this one, like colleges attended, if we're exporting a field like that, there's a bunch of kind of nested information that can come with that. So you can decide which of these you want to include, and then you can establish, you know, how much information, how far out do you want it to stretch the spreadsheet. So if you say college name, you might say, okay, I want to limit that to 5 rows. And then here it lets you see what those column headers are going to be. I was getting a little bit into the weeds there, but it does let you set this up in a way that you'll be able to accurately predict what's going to come out of it. So it won't be kind of, you know, all across the board.
I'm seeing comments about submitting a dummy application for applicants to, or for users to play around with. That's not a terrible idea. I can see whether or not that's something that we can accomplish. We're usually hesitant to submit fake data because it rolls into actual data and can screw up people's reports sometimes. But you know, we can look into seeing whether or not there's some sort of information that you can play with that you know, if you were to accidentally do anything, that it wouldn't really matter. I can look into that. When the portal does launch, we will be sending out notifications to everyone, to the directors for each site on how to access the portal, how to log in, and certain instructions on how to get going. So that information should come out on October 1st, which is the day that applicants can start submitting. So you should see information to start rolling in after that, but we'll send out, you know, some useful information on how to log into your account.
Can I ask a really quick question?
Sure.
I wasn't sure what the best way to do this, but say when the reviewers are reviewing applications, if we're ranking them like on a Likert scale, like a 1 to 5, what is the easiest way to do that? I know there's the tags, but that may be a little more, is there a way, and what's the easiest way to do that? Say you want to rank your applications like from a low to high, like 1 to 5, and then you can view all the 4s and the 5s or all the 3s.
Yeah, let me give you a brief demo of the of what you can do when you're setting up a form here, and you can adding a Likert scale is one of the options you'll have here. So let me just go into app review, and we'll click on forms. So you can create a form here, and this is if you want anything beyond what's kind of built in. So again, you have the comments area, the tags area, but if you want to kind of go beyond that and have a more in-depth evaluation, so we can say interview results, we'll just call it that. And we'll just give it a key to be found. And then this lets you get pretty advanced here, but I'll just do a basic. It lets you create different sections of the evaluation form and all of that. We'll just work with one for now. So I'm going to say interview results, and then we'll add, you'll see you can add questions here. So when you're adding questions, this could be, again, it could be rating the applicant on a bunch of different things. Like you might have a section where the interviewer is asking the applicant about their long-term goals or their future plans or whatever, and you want the interviewer to rate the applicant's responses to that. So you can just add something here that says, you know, future goals or something like that. So the interviewer might be asking the applicant where they see themselves in 5 years or 10 years or something like that. And then what you're going to set up here is how you want that interviewer to rate that. So you could say, well, we just want them to put in text. So we just want them to comment on this. Or it could be, we want them to put in a number. So we want them to add a numeric score, and it could be an integer. You can add decimal places, or more specifically to your question, you can make it a scale. So here it'll say you're establishing what the scale is going to be, 1 to 5, 1 to 10, whatever it might be. And then you can add labels on the endpoint. So you can say, like, for example, worst, best. And then what you've done here, I'll just add some help text here. So then the only thing I'm going to do here is give this a name here. And we're going to add this. So now this is going to be a question that appears within the evaluation pane for the applicants that are currently in whatever phase you want this to be. So if it's an interview phase that you place them in and you associate this form with them, they'll have this, the reviewer will have this, and they'll be able to respond to this question by choosing your scale here. And then that, again, that becomes available to use in other areas like the filters and whatnot.
That's great. Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So Reggie, Maria has a question that if they already have an applicant rating form that they want to upload and have reviewers use, can you subsequently export the results to an Excel spreadsheet since it's in an attachment?
So if you're adding it as an attachment, like you have it already established like on an Excel form, and then someone is going to then, like a reviewer would then download that form and add their results back to it, that wouldn't be, so you would be able to export that. It won't convert it like into an Excel file with other information from the application, but you can create like a file export that sends out that form or includes that form with, you know, say the PDF or anything else that's along with the application. So that is possible. It just won't kind of integrate that with the other fields that the applicant is responding to.
I think maybe the question, if we have an existing form that's in Excel, can we create that form in this system so reviewers can then enter their scores directly into the form within the portal, and then can we download the results, export the results using that form?
Yeah, so that would be the ideal use here. So you would take whatever questions you have here and build them as, or whatever questions you have on your other form, or whatever competencies you want them to rate on, or whatever the case might be, whatever you're looking at during the interview. And you would add each of those as separate questions, and they can all be rated however you want or responded to however you want. And then this information is available for you to use in those other areas of the software.
Wayne wants to know whether you can, because some programs have upwards of 80 reviewers, is there a way to add them in as a batch rather than as an individual?
I don't know of a way of adding batch users, at least not yet. But that sounds like something that they could try to find a way of doing. It's not, I'll just say it's not built into the software yet to do that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, I'm realizing we're over time, and because there's not tons and tons of questions, makes me feel like everyone is in that state of mind of, okay, this is, without having my own data in here, it's hard for me to track about how I'm going to use this. So I just want to say that we have many more webinars planned for the future. We will have step-by-step guides in the Help Center for training directors. And, but we would love, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm at kimberlyhill@stanford.edu. If you have very specific requests for content covered in webinars, we could even create webinars that are by specific topics. So folks who really want detailed help on just the assigning reviewers, interview ratings, you know, that component versus learning how to do scored paradigm exports of reports and those types of things. So if I get some general ideas about what you all are struggling with once you get a couple applications. So the students do have access right now to start attaching some of their documents to, they can select your site within the APPIC. They're starting to attach their cover letters. It is still so incredibly early, but they can technically start applying October 1st. I think that, you know, maybe 5 students will apply by October 1st. So it might be some time before you actually have a student, even though the portal will open October 1st, the likelihood that you're going to have applicants in there October 1st is slim to none. So, you know, see what Joni can do in her magic of creating a playground and, you know, have a couple dummy, I hate calling them dummies, but test users, test applicants. But
Kimberly, I think we do have some time for more questions. I think we were originally scheduled to go a little bit longer. So if there are other questions, which I saw a few more popping up here that we might.
oh, okay, great.
Kimberly, can you give us a sense of what level of support our members can experience on November 1st? Because I'm imagining it being, you know, 11:50 on Sunday night when I'm ready to close my portal and start reviewing on Monday morning, and I would hate to jam the phone lines to
Sure.
liaison.
Well, I think there's 2 questions embedded there. So one is that there's a great enhancement that you won't have to go in and close your portal. So Joni, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so what we can do is we should be able to set what your deadlines are. We're in the process of trying to work with the National Matching Service because they provide all of the program data to us. Or actually, I don't even think it's the National Matching Service. I think we have it through EACRED, Jeff, right? That we have deadline information. So we're going to go in and we're going to try to set folks' deadlines so that 11:59 p.m. on that evening. And Reggie, will that be Eastern time? I think, right?
I
Time zone is so important to clarify as the voice for the Pacific over here. So
exactly. Time zones should always be considered to be on Eastern time. That's how the previous application always worked. And, you know, while we're trying to be sympathetic of different time zones and develop some more technology around that, right now for this cycle, we'll be functioning on the Eastern time zone as we have. But when we're able to set those deadlines, the program will expire itself at that time. So nobody has to go in at midnight or 5 o'clock in the morning to close off a program. It'll basically expire on its own.
Yes.
And
APPIC is using the data from the directory to provide them that. So if you've set your deadline date in the APPIC directory correctly, then that should be what we're hoping to close it on that date. And you won't have to get up and close it at midnight.
Exactly. So assuming we can get that all accomplished, because that is something that's on our plate right now, is working with what the deadlines are, you shouldn't have to go in and close it yourself. And if you want to extend the deadline, we do have the ability to extend it to individual applicants, or you can reopen your application acceptance status, allowing more applicants to apply. A lot of that is going to involve some communication with our customer support staff, such as if you want to extend a deadline for one individual, you can provide us with that individual's ID number and we can extend the deadline for them. If your deadline is set and for some reason you need to close it earlier, you yourself don't have the ability to go in and close it. So if you need to change the deadline, you would have to contact us and ask us to change it for you, but that can be done.
Well, let me warn folks though, if you're closing it earlier than what you have posted in your public materials, that is likely to result in some problems for applicants who are counting on submitting that at midnight on November 1st or November 15th, whenever you have that set. So I encourage you not to change it earlier. You can certainly extend it.
Yes, of course. So yes, and to extend it, you can certainly ask us, and then we can go in and we can change that date for you. Or if you only want to extend it for a handful of individuals or one individual, you just let us know who that person is and we can do it for them.
Yes, this happens every year. One or two things happen and the training director is sympathetic to the concern that happened and will open their portal, and typically they had to open it for everybody, but now they can just open it. I believe that you're working on, Joni, is that they can just open it for that one applicant with that ID number.
Exactly. Yeah. That's great. And right now you would have to go through us for that, but we can make that happen. We can extend it for the individual applicants so you wouldn't have to open it and everybody else can sneak in. Reggie, we have some questions about, you know, stuff that's created, sorry to switch subjects here, information that's created during this particular cycles, you know, whether it's scoring rubrics or forms or things like that. When we log in next year, is all this information still going to be here?
Yeah, so there's no information that's going to be removed. So you'll still have it available for the next cycle. And I think what we're going to end up with is something, for those of you familiar with WebAdmit, you can switch from one cycle to the next. I think the way that it's going to work in this instance is you'll have kind of a filter that will take away the previous cycle's applications, but everything you build will still be available to you.
Well, if I come up with a nice interviewer rating form, then that will be able to be either used again next year or even improved or enhanced.
That's right. Yep.
Great, great.
Mm-hmm. And so, Shona, I didn't mean to evade your support question. So with every stage of this, just like every year on Halloween, the support services at Liaison and all of the associated teams that are helping, we increase significantly the amount of support based on, we know that the biggest bulk of applications comes in on Halloween. And so we'll do that this year, knowing that there are so many users to bring up to speed, and that folks like to dig right into their applications as soon as they're there. I think what would be ideal is, you know, mid-October, even if you only have one application, to start playing around with that one application or two applications and create your export so that it's ready to go. And that if you are having troubles creating whatever individualized exports or your dashboard, those types of things before you actually have all of your applications, that would be ideal. So I think we have lots of plans of increased support around our big deadlines and right in that first week of November in particular, but we really want to do more webinars and hopefully smaller group meetings to help people with very specific questions and tasks.
Joni, Brent has a great question about the closing or the auto closing of the portal. If a program is located in Hawaii, and what time? Is it 11:59 Eastern Standard Time?
So it's going to be 11:59 Eastern Time, yes. So, you know, regardless of what time it is in Hawaii, and even though it says, you know, 11:59 Hawaii time in the directory, it's going to operate on Eastern Time. So it's always going to expire at 11:59 Eastern Time. So applicants are going to want to take into consideration the time frame difference. That is something that we're working with. We're trying to recognize different time zones, especially Allison can tell you, you know, being in Hawaii, there's a very big different time zone. So we are trying to recognize that, but as of right now, it's going to function like it did last year, which is 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on the day of the deadline specified, and we will be expiring it for you. It's not something that you need to go in and close. So it will ask people to pay attention to what time it is on the East Coast, because that's the time that we're definitely referring to.
So that means that all of our training directors in a Eastern Standard Time zone need to go in and make sure that their training brochure and their face sheet in the directory specify their deadline in Eastern Standard Time. So a lot of our programs specify midnight in the time zone that they're in. So until we have that potential fix, that's what we're recommending.
Yeah, you're going to want to say, if you're saying that, you know, you have until midnight and it's generally referring to your local time, you're probably going to want to update that, because like I said, it is all going to reflect on Eastern time, regardless of what it says in the directory. I don't think we can capture the time zone like that. You know, we can't set up deadlines like that. So we're just going to take the date. So if you did list in the directory that it's going to close at midnight, you know, Pacific time, that would be incorrect. You would want to go and update that.
So a little extra pain now to have to go fix that, but the silver lining is that you don't have to get up in the middle of the night to go close your own portal.
Yeah, you know, you can take a day off, you can go on vacation, you can, God forbid, get sick and not have to worry about, you know, your deadline or closing the portal. It's going to be taken care of for you. You just have to be making sure that you're communicating the time zone correctly to the applicants so that they don't think that they still have 6 hours, you know, ahead of time when it's going to close.
Another great question. Can you have more than one evaluation form? Reggie, do you know if you can designate a specific form, like if you have several different tracks, one in neuropsychology, one in pediatric child, can you have different evaluation forms?
Yeah, you can build as many different evaluation forms as you'll need, and you know, assign them to the appropriate groups as they go through the application process.
Great.
And Jeff, I noticed that you listed the contact information. Previously, program directors would call this number that you've listed here, the 617-612-2899. That is more going to be for applicant use. The program directors, you will be reaching out to a different group of customer service individuals that we have. They're specific for admissions. I do not have that number just yet, but I can include that information when we send out the invites on how to log in on October 1st. We'll send out all the information on who you need to reach out to. This number is certainly still accessible, and as is this email address. It's just not designed for admissions users. So we will have a specific number and inbox for you folks that we will provide on that invite email.
Great, thanks for that clarification, Joni.
Yeah, sure.
And John had a great point of, wouldn't it be helpful if just the default deadline time was, you know, midnight Eastern Standard, or even Puerto Rico, right, would be the furthest. We've put that out there to our members before, and there's many programs out there who want to set 10 a.m. or noon. And so we haven't quite gotten everyone on board on everyone use midnight Eastern Standard, but that certainly would simplify that for all involved, but particularly students who stress a lot about what's the deadline. So as much as we can get folks to all be midnight Eastern, that would be great. Oh, and someone just pointed out that PR is Eastern. Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, the time zone's just difficult because in the grand scheme of things too, not just psychology internship, but a lot of the other applications that use our services here, deadlines and specific times and dates are, it's a hot topic. You know, there's a lot of people don't want it a second over the deadline, where some people don't mind. And then there's a lot of question about, well, what is the best deadline? Like you say, to make it in the latest one possible certainly does make sense. But a lot of folks want to work on their, their own time zones and whatnot. So it's a good theory. We just have to get a lot of people, I think, to buy into it a bit more. But it's definitely helpful to put information like that out there. We are researching this type of stuff too. That's why every year that you're always coming across new things that we've added or changed about the system. So always give us your feedback like that, and we can certainly look into it.
Mm-hmm. Reggie, I have a question that I've just been thinking about is, we've strongly encouraged our internship training sites to really consider doing all of their interviews virtually due to COVID. And particularly, I have a lot of freaked out students who are writing me emails from all over the country. Some of these sites are saying we strongly prefer in-person interviews, but they have a quarantine for 2 weeks, and I can't afford to take 2 weeks off and go sit in a hotel somewhere to go interview in person. So knowing that, the vast majority of our sites are going to do virtual interviews, is there some type of features within admissions that are going to really be helpful with the interview process that you can think of?
Yeah, so I think there are some features that are kind of in development, and Joni might be able to speak to this too, that there's going to be features where applicants can choose their interview times and things like that. That's a little bit more advanced feature, and it takes some time to get it set up and working, but I believe that's something that is in the works at some point. I don't think it's available just yet though.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings up a great point. We are working on many enhancements. We're trying to keep this as basic as possible this year to reduce the number of challenges that we're definitely going to have. But next year, look forward to some additional enhancements for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like we're just about out of time, but anyone else have any questions or two more questions? But I wanted to thank everyone for being here today.
And as an APPIC board member and as a training director, I just want to thank Dr. Hill for all the work that she has done with this new portal and getting it ready for our use. Thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome, and to Joni and Reggie and everyone involved. It's interesting. I mean, there's 4 portals. There's the letter portal, there's the time to track integration with APPI, and there's the new APPI portal, and now the selection portal. So lots of degrees of freedom for bugs. So I appreciate in advance folks' patience with any struggles that you encounter, but please don't, what I don't want is anyone sitting there, if you're sitting there for more than 5 minutes struggling with a question, just shoot me an email and I will do my best to reduce the time you spent struggling.
Yes, thank you, Kimberly. And to echo what Kimberly's saying, there are a bunch of new portals, so we know it's going to be a learning curve for a lot of people, and we do appreciate the change and everybody's patience, and we're going to do our best to support everyone, so as Kimberly said, don't spend all day trying to figure out how to do something. If it's not obvious within the first few minutes, then that means maybe it needs some better design or consideration. So certainly reach out to us. And I know that we're so close to launch day, and there's probably still a lot of questions. I saw Brent asked about whether or not we're going to communicate the new deadline or closing off your acceptance status automatically. A lot of information is going to be pouring out. We didn't want to release too much of it before the portal was accessible to anyone or before we were ready to do a webinar, just because we figured nobody would really retain much of that information. It's not really easy to understand without proof of concept. So in the next few days, and as we move forward through October and applicants start applying, we'll be sending out notification and whatnot, especially based on the sort of questions that we're getting. Just helpful tips and tricks and whatnot will be coming along their way. So hopefully it'll be as smooth as it can be with the various different help that we have. There is a help center that you'll be able to log into, and that help center itself is going to grow. We tend to build a lot of videos, short videos, 3 and 4 minute long videos that focus on specific areas. So if you just want to learn how to do one thing, you don't have to watch this recording. You know, you can go to a short guide video in the help center where 3 or 4 minutes and you can learn how to do something on your own. So a lot of that stuff is rolling out, and we'll be improving upon it and sharing it with everyone. And we just appreciate your patience while we all get to know all the new systems and the quirks and the hiccups.
Mm-hmm. Joni, last year I used the postdoc portal for the first time, and I was just so grateful. I made one phone call and someone on your staff walked me through how to do everything that I didn't know how to do. So I'm really optimistic based on my previous experience that this year is going to look like that too. Thank you.
That's great. That's great. That's what we love to hear. You know, you can certainly always give us a call. And if it's something that's really long and in depth and takes more than just a short phone call, you don't have the time, we can always set up another time to get in touch with you and possibly go over a training and whatnot. You know, so we do have the resources available. So please, you know, do reach out. Don't, if you're struggling, you know, don't hesitate. We want to make this transition as smooth and easy as possible for everyone, especially considering right now that everybody's already overwhelmed with what's going on with the pandemic and whatnot. So again, thank you all very much for being willing to learn and to attend our webinar today. And we'll definitely be looking forward to working with all of you and chatting with you.
Thanks again, everyone. Lots of nice positive comments in there, and we will keep working on this. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Hi, thank you.